Hey, aren't you that last guy from the other Witch's House video? If you are, thanks for coming to check out the next part of the Witch's House video. If you haven't came from the first Witch's House video, what are you doing? Go watch the other one first, asshole. For the ones who don't know who I am, my name is Tay. I am the host and the creator of History Behind the Horror. For the ones who know exactly who I am, thank you so much for tuning into this video and welcome to another episode of History Behind the Horror. It's been a very long time since we've done one of these videos, huh? So I thought since we did Was the Witch's House a good game? I think we should actually talk about one of the characters from the game. Now, I was thinking about doing Vola, the main character of the game, but I said, no, let's go ahead and just start with the worst of the bunch, Ellen. If you don't know who Ellen is, but you do know what the Witch's House is, and you haven't played the Witch's House, make sure you play the game first before you watch our part 1 video of Was it a good game, and before you actually watch this video. Because in this video, just like in our last video, I will be giving away spoilers for the entire game. You really just can't talk about this game without giving away spoilers. But anyway, before we start this video, I have a special announcement to make. This is the beginning of History Behind the Horror Season 8. Yes, our last HBTH video, which was of Siren Head, that was the end of Season 7. So I'd like to give a special shout out to everyone who's been here since Season 1, all the way up until now, or even the new people who come here and support the show. If it wasn't for you guys, we wouldn't have made it to Season 8, and I'm hoping to make it to Season 150 one day. So, or even higher. So thank you guys for the constant support for all these years. Also, before we start, make sure you guys check out the Patreon. We have an RPG horror game that's just like the Witch's House as far as death traps, but with its own twist to it. It is in demo form right now, but a full release is coming up soon. If you guys please go ahead and pledge on Patreon and check out the game and give us some feedback, it would really mean a lot to us. So, without further ado, let's begin the history behind Ellen from the Witch's House. Originally from the slums of a medieval time, Ellen was born with a curse which took the form of an incurable terminal illness which caused her to be shunned by society. Who shuns a little girl for a terminal illness? Who raised these monsters? Holy shit. Being part of an increasingly dysfunctional family, she was strongly attached to her mother while she desperately sought her father's affection. After an incident involving burying a black cat and subsequently failing to keep her family together, Ellen killed her mother for apparently abandoning her as well as her father for ignoring her to the bitter end, orphanizing herself and inadvertently burning her own house to the ground. Having nowhere else to go, Ellen decided to pass away in a dark alley outside her former home. Okay, so let's stop and analyze this for a second. Based on my sources about this game and Ellen, it says that she is over 1,000 years old around the time when she meets Vola. But back when she was first diagnosed with being terminally ill and also murdering her parents and burning her house down, Ellen was only 7 years old when all of that happened. That is actually pretty dark, and too much weight to be carried on the shoulders of a 7-year-old. While in the alleyway, a demon offered her a contract and she accepted, unaware of what she got herself into, as well as ignorantly accepting her sickness to be cured in the process. Upon realization that it still progressed inside her, that she had been deceived and lied to, Ellen was reborn as a witch. With this notion, she carelessly murdered various individuals, mostly children around her age, with the ultimate intention of finding a spell to cure her illness. Alright, so here's some food for thought. Whatever happened to that demon? So many years passed, 1,000 years plus to be exact. We meet Vola and so many other kids before Vola. What happened to that demon? We never hear from this demon ever again. We never hear about this demon ever again, at least in the game. Somebody told me there's a book based on Ellen that I have not read, but for you Witch's House fans, the ones who have played the game and also have read that book, do they actually ever reference the demon ever again? I have no idea, and it's actually really bothering me right now. And also another question, what was the gain to give Ellen the powers to be a witch and killing all of the kids and switching bodies with Vola? What's the end goal? What is the end goal for the demon? He didn't just come to this little lonely, lost, corrupted, sad girl in an alleyway with her illness and she just wanted to die. He just didn't come to her for no reason. So someone let me know if you have the answer to this, or at least the ones who want to just give it a little theory. What do you think the demon wanted from Ellen? Let me know. I'm very, very, very curious to hear you guys' answers. In the end, she was given a body switching spell instead, befriending Vola in the process with the intention of stealing her body under the false promise that it would be just for one day, while she was in her deathbed, ultimately staying within the unfortunate girl's body while leaving her to die in her former one. It is revealed in the true ending that Ellen was, in fact, inside Vola's body the entire time, that she was the player character within Vola's body, and that the real Vola attempted to use the very same spell Ellen used on her to trap her within her own house. Okay, so that's enough discussion about what happened to Ellen for now. Let's touch on a more personal topic. Let's talk about Ellen's personality. Since birth, Ellen was always scorned and avoided by the public because of her illness. Even her own father never spoke a single word to her. Living in the slums, Ellen was strongly attached to her mother, viewing her as the only person to show her love and kindness, and felt very insecure at the thought of losing that only source of quote-unquote love. As a result, she would do anything out of desperation to maintain it, such as forcing herself to stay home and become more independent and productive in order to not be considered a burden to her own family. In spite of their apparent closeness, it is heavily hinted that Ellen suffered from an Electra complex, as shown when she expressed animosity towards her mother because she was the only one who received any form of attention from her father. Upon discovering that her mother abandoned her, Ellen killed her in a fit of rage and despair, later killing her father, who refused to let go of his wife or take notice of his daughter until the bitter end, and quickly developed a strong inferiority complex, believing that she will never be loved because of her illness. Finding a cure eventually became her ultimate goal. Upon becoming a witch, Ellen's personality takes a much darker turn. She becomes a cold, cruel, and ruthless individual who, with no apparent remorse, would cause the deaths of others even in the most brutal ways to stay alive and achieve her goal. Her cruelty is shown by her amusement at Vola's misfortune at her hands. She kneels down in the true ending, saying, "I'll show him Vola's share of love, and I'll take her share of love too." She then giggles at the end of the story after Vola is killed by her own father. Another demonstration of her cruelty is in her previous mentioned disregard for others' lives. This is shown by her casual use of a frog to assist her past a section of the house. This section of the game cannot be completed without the frog being killed by the snake, so it forces the player to feed the frog to the snake despite its trusting and friendly demeanor. In spite of her cruel streak, Ellen isn't particularly sadistic, nor is she truly fond of killing others, claiming to only do so out of survival instinct, and compares it to humans killing pigs for self-preservation. She is also not above feeling some degree of regret or distrust towards her own actions during her sick days. So here's another thing that I thought about. In the beginning of the witch's house, we play as Vola, or it looks like we're Vola, but we're actually Ellen because of the whole body switching thing. By the end of the game, Vola chases Ellen out of the house to get her body back. Then Ellen explains to Vola that she switched bodies and she wasn't giving it back, and she also says she's surprised that she could trap her in her own home, but she also says how it's her house after all, so it guided her the whole way and made sure that she didn't die. Okay, so let's start with number one. At the end of the witch's house, Ellen explains to Vola how she was surprised that she was able to trap her in her own home with her own magic. So does that mean that when they switch bodies, Ellen gets no witch powers at all, and Vola gets all of the witch's powers, and also the quote-unquote curse that she got from the demon all those years ago? Which brings me to number two. What if the house never guided Ellen throughout the whole game and she had to do it all on her own? 9 times out of 10, one of those death traps in that house would have killed her. Now let's move on to the next step. What would Vola do? She's still stuck in the legless girl's body, or in Ellen's original body. So if the body she wants to get back, which is her body, is destroyed, what would she do? She would just end up dying. All the death traps that are in the witch's house destroys the body or just outright kills you immediately. So it doesn't make any sense to try to use the witch's powers or the witch's house to kill her. There's not one death trap you can give me from the witch's house that it says, oh, she'll be okay, and now she has free reign to come and switch bodies. There's a boulder that kills you, there's poison, a giant snake, there's a guy that cuts off, I mean, maybe the guy who cuts off your hand. I mean, I guess you get your body back, but your hand gets cut off, but maybe you die from blood loss at that point. It's very confusing. It is very confusing. So without the house's help, there's no way in hell that Ellen can get through all of these without dying. For the ones who don't know, this game has a shit ton of death traps that just seem like it's impossible to get through unless you know how to do it beforehand. So let's name off some of the ridiculous shit Ellen has to go through in this game. Giant teddy bear closing walls, killer butcher, giant snake, giant spider, giant bloody skull, poison soup, giant eyeballs, the book of death, toy nutcracker with a shotgun, haunted painting, haunted piano, haunted grand fucking father clock, and you also only have 1 hour to go through it all, and the prom tomorrow! Living in the witch's house for centuries, Ellen has managed to develop her literary skills and eloquence. Vola notes that she is very intelligent for someone with the stature and mind of a 7-year-old, as she is able to read several complex books and encyclopedias. Ellen also does retain some childlike traits, preferring to guzzle down tea and pastries because she had little to no interest in having proper meals. So with that out of the way, let's move over to the history portion of this video. Ellen's diary entries tell of her parents not loving her, and that she was so ill that no one played with her. Ever since then, she had been living inside the house. The demon, the cat, ate the souls of both her parents after she killed them with a knife, and proceeded to burn down her home and guiding her to the forest. It gave Ellen the house. She made a contract with the demon and became a witch. The demon told her that, if you let me eat more people, I'll teach you a spell to cure your illness. A letter shows that Vola's father knows of a witch in the forest, making the possibility that she had already trapped so many people in the house that it is known even from the outside. Okay, so totally disregard what I said earlier about not knowing who the demon was and what the end goal was. The demon was the cat, and the end goal is he just wants to eat souls. I had no idea that the cat in the witch's house was an actual bad person, like an enemy. I had no idea. The cat let me save my game. I thought he was a good person. Yes, I trusted a cat because he let me save my game. Apparently it doesn't take much for me to trust anything. The next diary entry says that her friends came into her house and the house ate them all, but it wasn't enough. Then Vola entered the house and became quote-unquote friends with her out of sympathy for Ellen's condition. One day Ellen asked for a favor of Vola, to switch bodies, just for a day. Vola foolishly agreed to do so and was shocked to realize that Ellen's body was falling apart. Before the switch, Ellen had gouged out her eyes and cut off her legs. Due to the pain of both the illness and the fresh injuries, Vola screams in agony in her newfound body. Unable to bear her own screams, Ellen gave her medicine to soothe, quote-unquote, the pain. But it was a throat-burning medicine that left Vola unable to speak, which is why Vola only gargled throughout the game. Thus, Ellen had rendered Vola helpless so that she could not get her body back. Oh no, I was actually feeling bad for Ellen too. The whole mom abandoning her, and then her dad never loved her because she had an illness and no one accepted her. Even though it was hard to believe that someone would not accept you just because you're sick and don't want to play with you, that sucks and it's wrong. But I mean, even after you murdered your parents, I was like, well, she's just hurt, and then she went into the alley and just wanted to decide to die, and then she got tricked by the demon, and I felt bad for this character. But now I don't feel bad for them at all. Not the parents or Ellen herself or the cat. No, none of those characters I feel bad for. I would rather you just outright kill Vola than doing the extreme things that you did. Cut off the legs, cut out the eyes, throat burning medicine. It's just sick and twisted torture at that point. Well, no, I take that back. It isn't sick, it isn't twisted, it isn't wrong. Oh, it's way more worse than that. It's unacceptable condition! Unacceptable! So before we wrap up our little twisted story here tonight, let's talk about Ellen's illness. The Diary of Ellen features several symptoms of Ellen's illness. Inflammation in her joints, making it hard to walk and, even in later stages, move. Severe and progressive skin inflammation causing her skin to become rough, crumbly, and red from blood. Blood and or mucus discharging from her eyes, and progressive vision loss at later stages. Heavy wheezing, low body temperature, and pain. She is in a lot of pain. While not stated by name, it is heavily suggested that Ellen may be affected by a generic degenerative disease or even cancer. Ellen states to have been born with the illness. Her illness only worsens as the story progresses and spreads throughout her entire body. Her illness can only be treated, not cured, and the symptoms appear to be irreversible, a fairly common attribute to generic diseases and many cancers. Ellen would periodically take medicine to slow down its progress. As her sickness is, in fact, incurable, the body-switching spell granted by the demon was Ellen's only resort for survival. And that's it. That's pretty much everything about the Witch's House from beginning to end. And this was a really disturbing game. And I remember when I first played this game years ago, I remember beating the game and getting the true ending and sitting there telling myself that that's a really fucked up ending, but that's exactly what's supposed to happen when you play a horror game. A horror game should have you feeling differently once you leave than when you first arrive. The reason we download horror games is to get a good story and to get the shit scared out of us. But The Witch's House was a special case and ahead of its time. Like, holy shit, I downloaded this game to be scared. I didn't know I was gonna cry too. It just goes to show that just because we are the main protagonist of the story doesn't actually mean that we are the heroes of that said story. Well, I guess that's all I have to talk about for The Witch's House. So if you did enjoy this video and you would love to see more here on HBTH, make sure to please like the video and subscribe if you're new here, and please check out our Patreon. We have an RPG horror game that we're making right now and a few others coming up soon. If you would love to get our episodes one day to a whole week in advance, please make sure you check out the Patreon to have special access to our content way before anyone else on YouTube. Again, with that being said, thank you guys so much for tuning in to HBTH tonight, and if you're not too scared or too busy crying like I was after playing this game, I will see you on the next episode of History Behind the Horror.